So I was in a discussion where we were talking about sometimes why the human mind tries to differentiate itself from something that it may be a part of. In other words, the human mind to try to reject being the fact that it's a subset of something more general, while it wants to think itself as different, um, mutually exclusive in terms of set theory. So let me refer to the actual excerpt and let me explain, maybe further explain what we meant, because I didn't have time when the issue when an analogy was brought up about why the human mind would do this and why it's actually wrong in trying to differentiate itself from the things it's a part of. The way through.
How about Brian? Why don't you just tell us exactly your conception of value? You don't have to reference the subjective.
Let's kind of break up.
Explain yours.
Let's kind of break. Oh, okay, that's where I was. I was going to break up the monotony with another clip. You want to kind of break up the monotony real quick?
Well, I kind of just want to get to what your conception of value is and how it's not subjective and is objective.
Okay, if you can agree. Okay, so let's set aside the value of a good, right? Because you probably think it's something very special, maybe mutually exclusive from value, right? So you know what I was doing with subjective and object, just to get off a quick rant, right? What I was doing with subjective and objective, the reason why I wanted to redefine it as a subset is because I thought the mind was inside of objective reality. To say that the mind's outside of objective reality seems stupid to me. It's like saying humans are outside. It's like saying humans are outside of nature.
That's a defensible argument, though. I mean, it's called dualism, and it's not like spooky. I mean, it doesn't appeal to like.
No, okay, so it's like saying, but it's kind of perspective dependent, right?
I mean, it's not. I think you're thinking of things very materialistic.
It's psychological on the part who wants to adopt that it's mutually exclusive. It's psychological in the fact that you want to think you're more special than you really are. Just like the fact that people want to call artificial mutually exclusive from natural, right? That's kind of like where I also want to put that in as a subset of natural. And that's the same. That's exactly the same. That's almost a perfect analogy, right? Me redefining artificial as a subset of natural, because nature created humans. Therefore, it selects for our behavior, thus making our artificial actions natural by default. Right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing as. It's almost another close analogy is like saying humans are mutually exclusive from animals, right? That whole idea of trying to think of oneself as special, especially your mind. You want to think.
I think it's very, like, I know what you're saying, right? Technically, humans are animals, right?
Yes.
But I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's like saying, a watch is something that tells the time, right? And my iPhone tells the time, therefore my iPhone is a watch. Yeah, sure, okay, technically it's great, but it does so many more things. I mean, it's clearly exceptional. It's almost like an insult to call it a watch. And I mean, it seems to me plainly obvious that humans are.
But logically, if it fits the definition of watch, if you define watch,
how is that useful? I mean, I don't see why. I mean, honestly, it sounds silly to me when people say that. I'm not religious, but.
No, so here's the problem. When you start to classify, when you start to try to distinguish between an iPhone and a watch, right?
Okay, so I'm going to go a little back and see if I can address some of these points, because...
What else? If you define watch,
how is that useful? I mean, I don't see so many more things. I mean, it's...
Okay, so...
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as... It's almost another close analogy is like saying humans are mutually exclusive.
So at this point, I was bringing up I think what the mind's doing is conflating between different and special, right? I think I might have even misspoke, right? When I accuse the brain of trying to be more special than it really is. I might have meant it. I need to think that through. But as far as trying to be special, that's what subsets do. When you're a subset of something, right? You have more features than the general criteria of the set you're a subset of. You have to add more definition to the subset in order to when you add definition to already existing criteria, which is the superset that it's of, in this case B, A inherits all the criteria of B and has more to make it a subset. So just being the fact of that subsets make it more special than the superset is what you want, is what the mind actually wants, right? The thing is, it conflates being special with being different, and that's the problem with language. Once you start conflating things, you start messing with the concept, and it becomes logically inconsistent. So when people say they're different from nature, what they really mean, if you want to be logically consistent, is that you're a special version of nature, a very special, it might be even a very special, unique version of nature, right? You might be the only element within B that has this feature, an extra feature that's added on to the definition of B. It's just like object-oriented programming here, right? Inheritance, right? You can build another object from a more general object. It can inherit its descriptive qualities, and you can add more to it to make it even more special, right? So when a participant here in this conversation brought up the case of the iPhone, right? The iPhone and the watch. The fact that if you define a watch as anything that tells time, and so therefore an iPhone fits this category, it makes it a subset. Now, when he made the emotional claim that it's an insult to do so, it's not, right? What he's conflating the idea that just because I say it's a subset of it, mean it's only a watch, right? That's a false interpretation. He mischaracterized what I said just by saying it's a subset of. I didn't say that, but it mischaracterizes the idea that it's a subset of a watch, right? So being a subset of a watch, so therefore the only thing it inherits from being a subset of a watch is that it tells time, right? It does a lot more. So that's what makes it a subset of a watch. Being a subset makes you more special than the superset, right? So being a subset is not an insult to that thing that's that element of that subset. It is actually making it more special, right? The problem is people conflate different with special in terms of set theory being mutually exclusive with a set as being special. And in this case, they're not making logical sense. So when you artificially put something, set something as, define something by declaration as mutually exclusive, when it's actually a subset, you're going to run into language problems where it's contradictory when you where it's contradictory when you try to use it, or it's contradictory with another idea when you point out that it has the same characteristics. It has this. It fits the definition of another set that it's mutually exclusive from. So when people want to differentiate between subjective and objective, it's not that they're different. It's just that one's a very special case of the other, just like an iPhone is of a watch. So I think he's gonna have a further problem here.
From animals is counter. Oh. So, well, keyboard versus QWERTY, maybe it's more effective.
So anyways, he brings up the matter about a superset called matter, like everything's matter. And then he brings up I think he brings up an instance of another human, right? It's almost an insult to call human a subset of matter. Being a subset isn't being inferior, it's being more special, right? The fact that you're human is not only do you inherit the criteria of being made of matter and having mass, um, but it also, being a subset, you have more definition than the superset. You can do more things than the superset, not just the thing that defines the superset, but you can do that and more. That's what makes you a subset. Not to force yourself to be different from that. Say, okay, I'm more special, than therefore I'm different. Therefore, I must be mutually exclusive. And this is the faulty reasoning of the human mind. And when you do that, you're gonna run into logical consequences when you're saying you're different, but you meet the definition of matter, right? Saying you're mutually exclusive and knowing that you fit the definition of matter creates a contradiction. And these are the things that you have to resolve with what he mentioned with duality, right? Let me look it up for the first time. Duality. It's got to be in philosophy here. Dualism, a twofold division in several spiritual, religious, and philosophical doctrines. Okay, let me click on that. Denotes the state of two parts. The term dualism was originally coined to denote co-eternal binary opposition. Again, they might be making the mistake of forcing opposition when it's actually a subset of a meaning that is preserved in metaphysical and philosophical duality discourse, but has been more generalized in other usages to indicate a system which contains two essential parts. Moralism is a belief that greater complement or conflict. In philosophy of the mind, dualism is a view about the relationship between the mind and matter, which claims that the mind and matter are two ontologically separate categories. And so, yeah, so I think it pertains to this, the whole idea that the mind subconsciously wants to make it more special by differentiating itself, and it subsets differentiate themselves by adding to the definition. And that's so, for instance, Usain Bolt is a very special human being. To say that it's not an insult to say he's a human being. It's just saying that he meets the definition of a human being. It doesn't go on to say that he doesn't have any further I don't want to say distinguishing, but further characteristics that not separate him from the pack, but yeah, actually, when you subdivide a superset, there's Usain Bolt and the rest of society, right? The fastest man alive versus the rest of humans, but he's still human, right? But he's different from his complement. That's true, and that still holds logical consistency. But to put him outside the superset is logically contradictory, and you can't do that. And just from the way I think, these are all ridiculous notions. You got to drop human emotion when you adopt analysis, and when you embrace this type of fallacious thinking, you're gonna run into language problems. And when people talk about philosophy, it creates it's disastrous as far as a conversation is concerned, because they don't even know they're not making any sense. And I can't even formulate properly a verbal argument against it. But I mean, I'm sure people can see what I'm talking about. Trying to differentiate yourself, trying to make yourself more special by differentiating yourself is not a valid logical alternative. You are special being a subset of something. All you do is inherit the general characteristics, but that does not mean you are more than that. just the fact that you're a subset makes you more special. So that should suffice to satisfy whatever emotional attachment you have to yourself, whatever category you belong to. You're not different from it. You're just a special version of it, a very particular version of it. So let go of this whole idea of, the mind being outside of matter or reality itself. It's a part of it. Humans are a part of the animal kingdom. iPhones are a watch, is a watch, but it's much more. Yes, it's a subset because it has more definition than it. It can do more things. It's a watch, and it is a phone, and it is a computer, and whatever function you use the iPhone for. Yeah, so I just wanted to address that point in that conversation because I thought it was important because it's just to me it's an interesting tendency for the human mind to it manipulates the logic of the human mind to it introduces emotion in analysis, especially when creating a definition, when you declare something as mutually exclusive from something when it's actually a subset of it. And you need to embrace the idea of subset and ditch that contrived notion of being mutually exclusive, because it actually satisfies being more special than the actual superset. Being maybe that prefix sub has some negative connotation as being subordinate, but in all actuality, it's actually more superior, or actually, in the very least, more special. That's all I wanted to say.